Good morning. I'm Calvin Crosby, Executive Director for the California Independent Booksellers Alliance. Welcome. Welcome to Sunday Services, California style. We have a special treat today. We have Marylee Carroll. She's a writer and a world traveler. Her Irish Catholic heritage probably goes back more than 1,000 years. Saint Elsewhere, Marylee's first book, a 2019 People magazine pick, is an adventure over the strange and aspiring achievements of gals who not only leaned in and broke glass ceilings, but who actually bent reality. In Somehow Saints, Marylee answers the call from fans for more stories about saints. Marylee has worked in travel, theater, and Hollywood before helping her husband build his business and raising their 3 daughters, who are now adults. Marylee Carroll is a lifelong resident of Pasadena, California, where she lives with her husband of more than 30 years, and I have it on good authority. She's a good customer of Romans. Joining Marylee in conversation is publisher and co-founder and editor Colleen Dunn Bates. She started her career by studying journalism at USC. She's worked as a writer and editor in radio, newspapers, and magazines, and books. It's the book business that stuck. She started Prospect Park Books in 2006 with the publication of the first edition of Hometown Pasadena. A 6th-generation Southern Californian, yes, that means she surfs, Colleen takes great offense when New Yorkers mock Angelenos as airheads who don't read. The mother of 2 daughters and the wife of television editor-producer Daryl Bates, the longtime Pasadena resident is a board member of Pub West and Immaculate Heart High School, and the LA restaurant critic for Westways magazine. These two happen to be good friends, which I think is a real treat. So now, ladies, I turn it over to you, and I'm going to disappear.
Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you, Calvin.
Well, I will start by saying good morning, good Sunday morning. I'm so impressed that anybody's doing anything on a Sunday morning other than lying on a sofa. Or maybe you are lying on a sofa and watching this. And I wanted to say, as the owner of a small press, how much, I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but what it means to our relationship with independent booksellers and why the support from Caliba is such an honor. I was involved with Skiba ever since from day one of starting my company, and have exhibited at every trade show in the past, and many of our books have been nominees, finalists for awards, and have won awards. Marylee's debut book, Saint Everywhere, was a finalist last year for the Skiba Awards, and now we're all one big California happy family. So anyway, thank you for your support of small press books, and we're doing our best to support you guys. So yeah, Marylee and I are friends. This book came about in unexpected ways. So I, for instance, did not know. I knew Marylee socially. I didn't even know she was writing a book. So Marylee, this was like a 3rd chapter, a late in life adventure for you. Although I think the roots to it go back a lot farther than I knew. So what took you so long? What took you so long to write your first book and now your second book? Well, we'll get to the second book later.
Well, if I lived to be 140, it didn't take me long at all. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely my 3rd chapter, so to speak. I just turned 68, and you published Saint Everywhere, which I've got a copy of it right here. Saint Everywhere came out when I was 65, and what took me so long is that everyone's busy, right? I was busy, but I was busy in a way that I also always kind of knew that I wanted to somehow in my life be able to dig down and bring out of me what I knew was there. But if you have 3 children and your husband has a big career and you've got a house that's falling down and you want to help in the schools and you want to help in your neighborhood and you want to do all of these things, like the unstructured efforts that go into creative projects fall all over the place. My house is littered with it. But time goes on and the kids, I used to say I'll get back to my writing when the kids go to school. Oh, okay. Well, when they get to high school. Oh, okay. When they leave the house. And then they left the house, and I was just standing there. And I thought, well, shoot. Well, shoot. So I I just embarked on it, and I wanted to hope very much that I had the chops to do it. And I thought, because if I don't, what am I going to do with all this energy and all the years hopefully I have ahead of me until I'm in my 90s? So I just promised myself this time that when I embarked on this creative project, as I had so many before over the decades, that I would really finish it. And I didn't worry about at that. I didn't want to put the cart before the horse and say, well, how am I going to get published? Then what am I going to do? I just thought, let me see if I have the chops to do it. And then I just trusted that the universe and God would help me out with the rest of it. So it did take a long time, Colleen. It did take a long time.
Yeah. So the story was, I had no idea. I knew Marylee was a very good storyteller, that she was doing some of it professionally, but also in our social circle. She's kind of famous for an annual Christmas tea, and she gives this sort of a grace, which is really a story that she tells every year that is always just extraordinary and brings this room full of women to laughter and tears. And so I knew that, but I had no idea she was writing a book. And it was a mutual friend of ours who's quite a reader and a writer herself, who just pulled me aside one day and said, Marylee hasn't wanted to tell you this, but she's written a manuscript, and I just read it, and I think you should read it. And this particular friend, Mel Momberg, had never said that. Is not the type to say that without meaning it. So I thought, wow, okay. And I read it right away. That was Saint Everywhere. And I thought, okay, this is fantastic. This has to be a book. So that's how that happened. And then that was I don't know, maybe.
But I have my version of that too, Colleen, is that, this mutual friend, Mel, is very erudite and very sharp and cynical and funny and so forth. And right at the right time in my life, she said, I'm going to start a writer's group. You want to join? And I thought, well, thank you, Jesus. I could certainly use that help. So I joined her writer's group, and I was working on this, but everybody in this group was like so cool. They were so smart and so cool. And I was very insecure on my subject matter, because somebody of my age and writing about saints, I thought, oh my God, is this going to fall into like duckies on tea towels kind of thing, you know? And I was just extremely like shy about it. So I didn't share much or anything like that. And anyway, the writers group fell apart in 4 months, but I kept going. And weirdly, a year and a half later, like out of the blue, Mel calls and she says, and it was the very day I had finished that manuscript, like the day I patted the stack of papers on my desk and said, I'm done. And like weirdly, an hour or two later, Mel calls and she says, how are you coming on that manuscript?
I never read this.
I said, wow, it's done. And she said, well, I'll be your first reader. And honestly, my toes sort of curled in my shoes. I thought, oh my God, why don't I have a sweet grandmother who loves me and anything I do is all right? Why do I have to get like the smartest woman I know to offer? And I thought, put your feet in the fires and see what you got. So that was that with the Mel. She had a crucial part in that link, but I don't think I ever would have offered it to you, Colleen, because how often you had said, oh my God, I got another unsolicited manuscript. What am I going to do? All these people with these terrible manuscripts, what am I going to do? And I thought, oh, I don't know if I can be that person.
Apparently I've been complaining to my friends a lot about that. I didn't know I was complaining so much about it. Well, yeah. And also I knew that Mel, you know, so I grew up Catholic. I grew up very Catholic, and I'm a lapsed Catholic. There's all kinds of jokes about that, recovering Catholic, whatever you want to say, but culturally certainly Catholic and Irish Catholic. And but I had never been interested in publishing anything religious. I'm not a religious person. It's not in our wheelhouse. But Mel is not a religious person either, and she was actually not raised Catholic. This didn't mean anything to her. So for her, she was just saying objectively, she loved the book, and it's not a, I grew up on, as a child, on just dreadful Lives of the Saints, boring, and Marylee, you had the same experience growing up on the things we had to read in Catholic schools in the 60s. Hey, yeah. So anyway, but then things ramped up. So how long did it take you to really, from putting keys to keyboard to Saint Everywhere coming out? Was it about a decade maybe?
Well, so yeah, it's interesting because as I said, when you got the manuscript, you said, I always get manuscripts that are hard to classify, and I never, and same with the new book that is the continuation of the journey. I don't, even though it might have, a spirituality cover and so forth, and saints, it's not a religious book. It's a book about life, I would say, and achievement, and people achieving far beyond what they thought was possible, and therefore inspiring us to be what I call a bigger version of ourselves. But the first book was really, it goes back through 20 years of travel notes.
Oh, that's right. 20 years. Yeah. Okay.
But when I really put the pedal to the metal, it was like 3 years to write. And most of that was because I didn't know really what I was doing yet. And I didn't know where the end was. And I didn't know, it's a huge topic, right? And I didn't know how to end it. And somebody very helpfully said, well, maybe you're already done. And I thought, yeah, I'm done, so that effort took, you could reach all the way back till my earlier years, but the real effort was a concerted effort, was a 3-year effort.
And so for those of you who don't know Marylee's either book, and they are very much of a piece. It's not necessary for the new one to have read the first one. They are, but what she does is, you're going on a journey with her as she's learning about these women. And now in New and Somehow Saints, there is a man in there who's got quite an extraordinary story. He's in the process of becoming a saint, so he's considered venerable. But the first book, it was all women, and how these women, all of whom came of age in a time when women were decidedly second-class citizens, third class, fourth class, whatever you want to call it, and they overcame that to achieve great things, and regardless of your faith or lack of faith, they're just extraordinary stories. But really, what it is Marylee weaving with a lot of humor and your own. Marylee, you're talking about your own. You're feeling inadequate. You're feeling like, what can I do? My little ways of, is baking a cake for my neighbor enough? How can I be a better citizen of the world? Which is what we landed up settling on as cover copy from these stories. And you're throughout this, we're watching your valiant attempts, and you often feel like you're not quite there, but you're trying. And do you feel like in the course of all this that you've gotten there a little more, or
yes, actually, I couldn't help but be moved and inspired by all of these women myself as I was researching them. And my method for doing it, because the thing that I also hated, Colleen, I thought, how come these Lives of the Saints is so, I hate to say it, but it's so stodgy, so boring, so like no access to who they must have been. Because I have this theory that if you can get people to do whatever it is you want them to do, which they all did, you had to have a good personality. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's a downer.
Yeah, right.
Right. And I thought, wait, people are missing like there's more going on here. And I also did not feel I was the person to write like biographies on them, but I used this template, so to speak, that I thought, well, I got the material from the first book from all of my travel journals, because I used to work in travel a long time ago. I was a trip director and would take people all over the place, etc. And I thought there was a theme I saw in these in my journals. I thought, God, all these cities I went to, I always either found myself at a miraculous site, or I would suss out a shrine, and I thought, I wonder if I could kind of do a fresh take on some of the lives of these amazing women and men by me being the traveler and me being the filter to kind of reinterpret some of their messages for today's audience. Like, what do they have to say to us? And so the selection of saints you find in here are only ones who I've actually traveled to their shrine in wherever they are in the world and had my own observations there. You know, like, where did I find coffee before getting there? And what do the people look like? And am I like them at all? Or are they too strange for me? And
don't forget the relics, Marylee. Your fascination with the relics.
Well, I got started when I found myself. I was in Siena, and you know, in the cathedral in Siena, they have a relic from Saint Catherine of Siena, and I kid you not, but it's her thumb. Her thumb is 600 years old, and it's in a filigree case in crystal on a velvet cushion, and there it is, and people are praying before it, and it looks, you know, like a piece of charcoal with a fingernail on it. I mean, you know, the whole thing. But so, okay. And I thought, okay, we Catholics, here we go again. But what amazed me is how moved people were by being in front of this. And so I thought, okay, Catherine, who are you that people want to be in front of your thumb 600 years after you died? I want to know you. So that's kind of the mindset that I want to know you. You've got a tomb with huge gold letters on it in this gorgeous cathedral in Montreal. Who are you? So I don't know. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. And I can tell in your voice. So you know, the 20-year journey to get resulted in Saint Everywhere. Mm-hmm. So then things are a little different with Somehow Saints, which is the book that comes out in November.
Yeah.
That was unexpected for you in a whole other way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, as you can imagine, my life up until this point was very much trying to be a good person from my own front door, right? I didn't have any sort of a public life. I didn't have any sort of a bigger life outside of my family, really, and a bunch of friends. And I love people. I'm a ardent extrovert, and this quarantine.
Marylee has a very large family and a lot of friends, so.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. The quarantining is my own little version of hell right now, I gotta say. However, I'll just tell this little story, Colleen, because it was very meaningful to me. So Colleen invited me to go with her to the American Library Association's convention and help her set up the booth and do a book signing for the librarians that were coming by, which this is me hitting my big time. I was really thought I was had a ride. It was just so much fun. And as Colleen does do when she takes her authors someplace, she said, well, I'd like to, let's go to dinner after we'd been doing our thing during the day at the convention.
This was in Washington, D.C.
In D.C. And we're at some restaurant. At being a restaurant critic, she knows the places. And we're sitting there like two grown-ups having a martini, 3,000 miles away from home, and the book has been out 2 weeks, and it's doing really, really great. And she says, well, what are you going to write next? And honestly, I practically choked on my martini. I thought, next? Like another one? I mean, I cannot even get my wig on straight for this one. And we talked about some things and so forth. And I thought, oh my God, she's actually pinning me on this. And you know, I've always had a lot of people tell me I need to write about my family, my sibling family in my years of growing up. But really, I was so in love with my topic, and these women get addictive. And I said, you know, Colleen, I'd love to keep going. I'd love to keep exploring the world to find more amazing people. I know how to do it now. And it would be just amazing just to keep it going. And then she looks at me, and if you don't know Colleen, she's an excellent businesswoman, and she doesn't take wiffle waffling, and she's just really direct. And she said, well, can you get a book ready by Christmas? And this was like, which would give me like 6 months to write this book. And I almost spit out my ice cube. And I thought, and I just said, I don't know, Colleen. I honestly, the words just came out of me. I will certainly do my best. I'll certainly do my best. And I thought, boy, this is like, God, you've loaded me up here, you know? So, but I knew I had a very busy summer last summer because I did speaking at all the bookstores across the country, bookstores, libraries, churches, home parties. And I had a very busy schedule for the whole summer. And I thought, wow, and I don't even have the material. I don't have the cities. I haven't done the trip, you know, the traveling. But I just thought, take it a step at a time. What I always told my kids, it's one piece at a time. Just don't look at the whole picture, one piece at a time. And
you did it. And you did it. And you learned something that I learned because I used to be a writer. I mean, I guess I still am. I just write emails for a living. But I went to journalism school, and I used to be a magazine writer. And I learned the power of the deadline. And when you have to do it, you do it. And I always found for myself that I would wiffle waffle for ages, and then my best writing would come from when I had to get it done, because you get focused. Did you have that experience? Did you feel like it focused you?
Oh my gosh, it was a gift. That tight deadline was amazing because I had not experienced the amount of energy that I got in a very long time. And you know, I'm ADD, and one thing about people who have ADD, their days can be these wild loose ends where nothing gets done until you have something concrete to focus on, and then you have very, very acute abilities to focus. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to deploy that for this. And and I gave myself, so you gave me the deadline. The manuscript had to be in by March. In fact, weirdly, March 13th, the day the country, shut down. Mm. And you had given me the opportunity back in June. And I went through everything that was in front of me in terms of my calendar for speaking events on book one. And I thought, okay. And I quickly lined up some thoughts in my mind. But I gave myself, I said, Marylee, you can do it. You do all your research while you're traveling for your first book and beyond. Gather your ideas, just keep it mental. And then on November 1st, I sat down, and and somebody said, well, did you write like 4 hours a day or what? And I said, no, I wrote every day, all day. And I was really, it's terrible. I was really mad when Christmas came. I thought, well, because who puts on Christmas when you're, got all these, and I thought, no, this, I've got to just hang in here. So of course we all had Christmas. And then the day after Christmas, I went away from the family in the home to take 3 or 4 more days of solitude. And I just kept my foot on the pedal until.
And you did it.
Yeah.
So in the new one, Somehow Saints, the reason to let you guys know about why the title has meaning, Somehow Saints. They are not the people she talks about, the trip she goes on. They are not all saints. Some of them are in the process of becoming sainted, and also in between the chapters are these interstitial, very short stories about just people that she's encountered in her daily life that have inspired her in one way or another. They're the somehow saints in our lives that we all, encounter all the time. But of the actual saints or venerables in the new book, what's one that you find particularly inspiring for the times we're in right now?
Oh my gosh. In reality, each of them has an aspect that super fits right now, but some of them are pretty monumental. And I would say, you know, people have a little bit of quandary, like, who is this? But, and even originally, Colleen, you might want to talk about this, the journey for the cover.
Yeah.
But one of my saints, her name is Bakita. And actually she is a patron saint. I mean, it's strange to say there's a patron saint of human trafficking, but actually, and of displaced persons. And so honestly, that's a giant issue today. And her life is an extraordinary surmounting of these types of circumstances. So she, in an exotic time and place, and so she would be somebody. There is, and if we have time, I don't know, but I'm prepared to read a section from St. Catherine Drexel, who had all the money a person could ever need in the world. And what she did with it, rather than, you know, buy Picasso lithographs and yachts, like what people might do today, she, in an era that it was, nobody was doing it, let alone a woman who was of a very fine Philadelphia family, nobody had much concern for you know, the lowest segments of society back at the turn of the last century. So,
well, you know, Marylee, since you brought that up, why don't we? You have a little piece from about Drexel.
yeah.
Would you want to jump in and do a quick read for that, just to give people an idea of?
Well, sure. If this is a good time, I'd be happy to. Because what the book is a mix of sort of travel and perceptions, but let me see where.
And reflections on your life and your attempts to be a better person, you know, and
yeah.
humor. I mean, both books are very funny. I mean, it's, you know, Marylee's observing her, you know, her family, her everyday challenges, the little things that go wrong. Anybody who travels has to put up with petty annoyances like crazy, and so it's a very warm and witty journey.
Although this little section doesn't point it out, but I also, you know, as I think it happens for all people, as you get older, you know, I start thinking about my childhood a lot as well, and it's just some of the stuff that my family was like it's ridiculous and was hilarious in growing up. So those stories also get woven into the main chapters in here. But I'm not sure this.
And Marylee is one of you. You were one of 10 children, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, with a character of a grandmother, and so, you know, those of you Southern Californians who might know our book Hometown Pasadena, the new edition of that I published about 2 years ago, I guess. Marylee has a piece in there about her grandmother was the real little old lady from Pasadena. The song was written by one of her cousins, Jan and Dean. And Jan is your cousin, right?
Right.
And her grandmother was the terror of Colorado Boulevard, and she's got a great story in that book about that. So this Grandma Ruthie appears in Somehow Saints as well.
Mm-hmm. And she was the terror of Colorado Boulevard, not because she drove so fast. In her cases, because she drove and never knew that when her blinker was on. And so her blinker was like always on, and she was always in the wrong lane. So, I don't know, more on her in another. Well, sure, if you're ready for it. So I think I'll take a little piece from the first chapter, St. Catherine Drexel. And we have very beautiful illustrations throughout, but more on that later. And so just come with me, we'll just drop right into it. And now I was here, standing happily in one of the great railway stations in the country, DC's Union Station. Its architecture is so frescoed, so grand, a thrilling start to my train travels. There'd be 2.5 hours to look out the window at the things seldom seen from freeways, the backsides of wrecking yards, old factories, so many interesting polluted canals. In Philadelphia, my aim was to learn more about Catherine Drexel, the fabulous society heiress who became a saint. Very few inspiring people had the array of choices Catherine Drexel did. At the age of 25, she and her two sisters inherited $14 million, quite a sum in 1883. What was expected of Catherine was to make a brilliant marriage match and take her place among her peers. But what she did do was cast her eyes upon the most mistreated and forgotten segments of society, African Americans and Native Americans. These were the others with whom white people didn't want to interact with. For this, some call her the Mother Teresa of America. In that era, from 1890 through the 1940s, Catherine had the chutzpah and personality to attract hundreds of women to join her as she off-roaded across America, pioneering the advancement of racial equality and education. Churches and schools with even the most remote connection to the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament, the order she founded, were blocked, targeted, or destroyed before they could open. Catherine was undeterred. Macon, Georgia passed a law to keep SBS sisters out of town. She fought that law and won. When people found out that Xavier University in Louisiana, which she founded, was to be for Black students, they smashed out every window. Catherine and her sisters crisscrossed this country by train, boat, stagecoach, and car to bring betterment to those whom few others would aid. And her motto was to attract them with joy. She'd quote Jeremiah 29:7 to her sisters, "Seek the welfare of the city, for in its welfare you will find your welfare." Well, yes, yes, yes to that. Just a little peek.
You know what strikes me now hearing you read that, you know, it's always different when something is read as opposed to read, is the word joy. And that word really sums up a lot of Marylee's, of her writing, that you infuse, so that you chose that word. I mean, you picked that quote for a reason. And so is that what's, because you're looking to bring joy in even in the face of darkness, and we have a lot of darkness going on in our world right now. So
yeah,
is that what you look for in these?
Yes, you know, I really, you know, humans are wildly resilient people, or creatures. And you know, I just think in times that seem really stressful and you know, like, where's this all going? How are we gonna, you know, how are we gonna bring ourselves together? How are we gonna pull ourselves together? Blah, 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 blah. I think to myself, well, how we're gonna do it is by overcoming our negativity and by bringing smiles to each other's faces, and by standing tall, and by being that positivity, I think. And not to be Pollyanna, but these saints, they give me example after example of, like, you go forward, you know. I mean, have that baby, get married, keep bringing your joy into the world, and not let it take, you know, you have to overtake it. It can't overtake you. And I, you know, and so in a way that I wasn't expecting, that's what I want these books to do, is to, like, have people read them and enjoy themselves, laugh, and get perspective on our situation today, because they've all faced incredibly steep mountains. They just, you know, did. So I'm kind of a little bit annoying to my children who are, like, absorbing the doom and gloom in monumental amounts. And I hope just to, you know, be strong for them, and a pillar, like a lighthouse. Like, you know, we're all challenged, but none of us are doomed.
Yeah, no, and when you see the people, the women, and in the case of, which you'll have to read in the book, of the Venerable Pierre Toussaint, a man, but who overcame, but because he was, I mean, just the fact of a Black man rising to become a high society and wealthy hairdresser in the 18th century in New York City is just so wildly improbable. So, you know, these people did overcome tremendous,
Yeah.
You know, there was a mention, because we're going to run out of time more than we thought. Can you hold up, do you have, you know, the St. Catherine chapter, the illustration? Because I want to mention the book's packaging and the illustrations. So that we had, yeah, I don't know if you can see, it's really a wonderful, this is the, we called it Nuns on a Buckboard, crossing this, Catherine Drexel and her sisters crossing the barren West. Very, very challenging what they had to deal with, in full habits, nonetheless. But what happened was, as part of this community, this is a small press thing, and all you booksellers understand have the same sort of community. It's all about my community, and it's all about your communities and our communities. So the husband of Mel, the friend who brought us together, Melody Momberg, is Joe Rohde, who's a kind of a big deal Imagineer at Disney, and is a fine artist in his spare time. So he illustrated. There was this idea to have him do some illustrations for the first book, and that was very successful. And then we had him do the same, except he completely changed the style for the second book, for Somehow Saints. And you know, I wanted to mention that why I chose to make the books the way they are. I think, just to tout a small press, I think if this had been a Random House book, it would have been, and it had every right to be a big 5 book, but it would have been a standard trade paperback or just a very generic hardcover. But we made it more of a gift package, hardcover with line art illustrations and really nice paper, and have to make it reflect the writing and because it really has proven to be a gift. This is something we found with the first book, it was given as a gift like crazy. And that's partly why I was pressuring Marylee to get it done so that we could have it out for Christmas time, because now there's the COVID challenge, but that's all right. People are going to be buying Christmas gifts, but wanted to have it be a beautiful object that would be a gift to give your friend, your neighbor, your sister. That certainly proved case for the first one, and we expect that to be the case with the second. So anyway, the illustrations are quite wonderful by Joe Rohde, and he really captured some of and they're a little moody, which is, your writing is not moody. His illustrations are a little moody, which I think is a nice balance.
It's a nice balance. It gives it a nice juxtaposition, because it's nice. I was so amazed by the beauty of both books, Colleen. And in fact, to this day, I mean, the first book came out a year ago, May, and I get emails. I still every day. Now it's, of course, from people I don't know. And it's by their bedside, or they go back and they just read one paragraph, or they, it's been quite something. But, maybe tell them how you got the cover, or where this art, because it's very intriguing, and what this piece of art is.
We both books, we really, really struggled with cover design, and we put a lot of effort into cover design. And it's a challenge because so many of the images that are out there of the saints, the book would end up looking too much like those books that tortured Marylee and me as children of the Catholic textbooks of Lives of the Saints. And we did not want it to look like that. And I didn't. So it's very, very difficult to find images that work. And after so much searching and many other cover designs, we found this image, which was a mural. It's now been painted out, but it's Saint Paquita, and it was from a refugee center in
Sudan. It was in Sudan.
Okay. Yeah, in Sudan.
Yeah.
And it was just a folk art that was on a wall, and some journalist had taken a photo of it. The mural is no longer there. but there was something so, I don't know, that just spoke to me. And she has a real Mona Lisa look here. There is that sly, and part of this was practical because it was the other side of her face wasn't painted as well. It was a little, it looks like the artist ran out of time. But we really liked that. And the cover designer, David Taravanesian, who's quite a wonderful guy, he had the idea of adding the color and the flowers and to beef up the vibrancy and the color to connote the joy that I was using that word earlier that Marylee is writing. So anyway, so that's Saint Paquita, a mural of her, and but she's there to represent all somehow saints, all the improbable people who overcame situations to do amazing things. So we're running out of time, and I think, you know, one of the purposes of doing this is because we just love our bookstores and are there to help you guys in any way, is that we really wanted you to meet Marylee and know that she is a wonderful speaker, as you can see, and available. Would love to do Zoom events, conversations, panels, in person, whatever our book selling friends might want. I can tell you, with some of you may have met her during the St. Everywhere tour. She did a lot of events. Had a huge crowd at Vroman's. People were all the way down the staircase, and it's heartbreaking that we can't do that now. But there's the virtual world out there. So just wanted to put that out there to the universe. So, all right. Well, any closing thoughts? I think we're wrapping it up.
I just, Colleen, I can't thank you enough. This has been a blast, and I feel fortunate because I love talking, and you gave me a chance to talk. So,
well, thank you, Calvin, for that. Calvin and all of you at Kaliba for giving us this opportunity. We're very, very grateful.